Hello, Central Kentucky, and welcome back to another episode of My Kentucky Home Podcast. We're kind of evolving. So what started out as a platform to really kind of provide information for you, our audience, on people who are doing work in your home so that you don't have to do it, just so you can meet them, get some educational tips. We've also kind of found that there's a lot of interesting businesses in Central Kentucky, and a lot of the owners have great backgrounds, and we wanted to start to share that as well. And today, our guest is a perfect blend of that. So I'm very excited to have Liz Toombs with us. Liz, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. Glad you could make it.
Yeah.
So Liz is the founder and owner of PDR Interiors, and she is an interior decorator, certified interior decorator. But she has a very unique business model, and that a big portion of her business revolves around doing design for sorority houses. Is that correct?
It is correct. Yes. Yep.
Okay. Well, how did you kind of get started in that direction?
I like to say I fell into it. The full story is I did a fraternity house at UK. I helped them spruce up 2 rooms, I think. My husband was fundraising at the time for the university, and he was helping them raise money for their new house. But then they were like, can she help us in the meantime, because this house looks so bad? So I helped them with a couple of rooms. I took down curtains that I think had been there since the 70s. So, I mean, it hadn't been touched in a long time. And then I've always grown my business through word of mouth. And so in true fashion, a women's organization on campus needed some help. They had an alum that was volunteering, and then she moved away. So they didn't have anyone to help them anymore. And they had found out about me from the men's organization. They called. I helped them. And then it just sort of spiraled from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you graduated from the University of Kentucky, right?
I sure did, yep.
But you grew up in Louisville.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I've got to ask this because I used to travel a lot. And people would always say, where are you from? I'd say Lexington, Kentucky. And they'd say, oh, is that where they have the Derby? And I'd say, no, that's in Louisville. And my wife would get angry. She's like, it's Louisville. I'm like, I know that, you know that, but outside of Kentucky, it's Louisville. So when I'm talking to people outside of Kentucky, that's what I say. Being from Louisville, how do you say it?
Louisville.
Okay.
Like a mouthful of marbles. Louisville. That's how I always say it. And they've got those shirts where it has all the different pronunciations of it on there. But you're right. People outside the state call it Louisville or Louisville, but I call it Louisville.
Oh, she would get so mad at me.
Yeah.
I mean, she would.
I'm with her. I'm with her because I'm like, no, you can say it the way we say it here.
Well, I spent a summer in Boise, Idaho.
Yes.
And that's how they knew if you were from there or not. Because if you say Boise, you're from there. If you say Boise with a Z,
yes,
they know you're not from there.
Oh, because I've always said Boise with a Z.
Yeah, it's Boise.
Okay, yeah. Well, good to know. Good to know.
You use that when you go there, they'll think you're local. So.
Yes, I try to assimilate to the town wherever I am. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, so you got started doing. So do you do them all over the country?
We do, yes. So kind of to continue that story, that women's organization that we worked for, all of their housing was managed from their headquarters. And so some people from the housing department, I connected with them. They asked me, did I travel? And I said, oh, sure. Like, I'll go within 3 hours driving distance. No big deal. I can do that. And then they called and they said, well, we have something in Maryland. Would you go to Maryland? And so I was like, yes. But then I was like, well, how do I do this?
Every entrepreneur's favorite word, yes.
I'm like, yes, absolutely. But then I was like, well, how am I going to do it? So I went and, gave it a go. I spent a week up there, worked on the project, and then it kept going from there. And they would say, would you go here? And then I met someone that runs a property management company that focuses specifically on Greek houses. And they said, well, would you work over here for this client? I was like, of course. So here we are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you just, I guess, is that kind of seasonal? Because if they're in school, you're probably in the summer going all over the place, right?
You're exactly right. So we're usually about 6 or 8 weeks in the summer, depending on how many projects we have going. We're traveling to install because, to your point, if the students are in the house, they need to have everything settled and done. So it kind of works where, the end of a year, like December through now, depending on their timeline, is when they're planning some things. And then that way, when the students move out in May, if there's construction to start, it can happen, painting, whatever is going on. And then furniture can start to come in June, July, and August before the students show up. And you know how it is in the construction world. Everything's always the last minute, and we're the last ones to go in. So sometimes we're walking out the door a half day before the students are moving in, but it works.
Gotcha. Now, do you only do sororities or do you do fraternities as well?
We will work with fraternities, of course, but I mean, to be frank, they don't want all the pretties that the women's organization wants. So like the curtains and the pillows and all the things that clearly make me very excited. So we'll do it, but it's kind of a different concept. And sometimes they just want more utilitarian, basic stuff, so they don't necessarily see a need for someone like us. But I say that, and I'm picking finishes for a men's house down in Austin right now. So they're building, and we're picking out everything for it.
Okay. Well, the reason I ask is I have a son in a fraternity. I've seen their house, and you can't make things that are indestructible for them.
No, but do you know what the group in Austin told me? They said, well, time was key, like how quickly we could get it, price not so much, and it had to be hosed off. Anything I put in that house had to get hosed off, and I was like, okay, that's a new one, but we can do that.
That's kind of scary, actually.
I'm like, I don't know what goes on in there, but I'm fine.
Okay, interesting.
Yep.
So when you were little, like, were you running around decorating things as a kid, or is this something that was later you got interested in?
Oh gosh, that is so funny you asked me that. So my granddad was a realtor when I was a kid, and it was like the age of open houses, and so I would go with him sometimes, like after church, go out there and just, it could be an empty house, like new construction, it may be somebody's home, and I would just see how it was decorated and, the different architecture styles, and that really hooked me. That really made me interested in just the whole design field, and then I just, would watch shows on TV about it, and I think I drove my parents insane, because I would be like, let's rearrange the furniture, and I'd move stuff around, and my mom would be like, no, I liked it where it was. Like, let's put that back. But yeah, it's always kind of been with me since childhood for sure.
Okay. So now you mentioned the shows. Mm-hmm. There's a ton of them now. Mm-hmm. And I know because they're on my TV a lot. Mm-hmm. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for you?
I don't watch HGTV. I get very frustrated. I'm sorry, I should say I watch the real estate shows on HGTV because that's not my line of work. So that's fascinating to me. But when it comes to like the home renovation shows, I think it gives an unrealistic perspective, in 30 minutes, which could equate to 7 days in real time, this whole house gets turned around for literally pennies on the dollar for what you pay in real life for things. And so I think it sets up unrealistic expectations for homeowners to think that you can do it that quickly and you can do it that inexpensively and it be the quality level in which you actually want it to be to have some longevity. So I get very passionate about this. So in theory, the shows are lovely, but I think we've really gone too far and we're not educating the public on what it's like to do a home renovation project.
It's become entertainment, basically.
Oh, absolutely. It is straight reality TV. And I actually know a couple of folks that have been on some home renovation shows, and afterwards they've had to bring in other contractors to fix the work that they paid for to have happen on that show. And it just, it was quickly slapped up at the end, staged so that the camera could come through and take it. And then they were left with having to fix things. And I don't think that's right.
I've heard that. I've actually read articles about that as well.
Yep.
People have paid a lot of money for those to be on those shows.
Yeah, they're not getting that house for free. They're doing it as if they were hiring a local remodeler here and paying it out of pocket without the cameras. They're still putting money in. And so I don't know. I think it's a disappointment.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Mm-hmm. And also I see, and I want to touch on kind of some trends that are going on later in the show, but I'm in a lot of houses because we do a lot of real estate transaction stuff with the mold, and I feel like I have walked into every possible farm-style Joanna Gaines white house that you could possibly walk into.
Yeah, that maybe doesn't need to be a farmhouse?
Yes. Is that coming to an end anytime soon?
I wouldn't say that it's coming to an end. I do think some people are being more realistic with it, and instead of taking their colonial home and making it a farmhouse inside, they're choosing to build a house that has that vibe. Because if you look at the new construction right now, a lot of it has that shake and that siding, and then inside has that more modern farmhouse look. And so I think new construction is probably going that way very much so. I think people renovating are getting wise and saying, okay, that style, I like it, but it doesn't fit my house. And then some people just go on a tirade about it. Like they don't want anything to do with it.
Well, my favorite is the do-it-yourselfers.
Yeah.
That, interesting enough, we've seen a lot of mold situations where people are wanting to do kind of that shiplap look.
Yes.
but they just bring in wood from wherever, and they bring all this mold into their house, and they don't even think about the wood being all moldy and rotty, and then they get like a humidity issue or something, and it just like takes over their basement, and they're like,
well, and I think that goes into, education again, right? Like, yes, it's beautiful. And like Joanna and Chip, they have put in the right materials. They know in the background, like what they're doing and that they're doing it correctly. There's not really time to address that on TV for the DIYers, to your point. So it makes someone think like, oh, I can go out and get that plank off the road. I'm just going to slap this on the wall and paint it and it'll be fine. And I have a lot of respect for Chip and Joanna just in general as entrepreneurs, and I've been down to Magnolia a couple times, but cool. I just don't think you can blanket every house in that style and think it's going to be okay.
Absolutely. So is it pretty neat down there?
It's really cool. So the first time I went, I guess it's always been the silos that I went to, but the first time, like, it wasn't quite as abundant as it is now. And now they have this like AstroTurf grass area next to the shop. They have all these little food trucks set up permanently. It was really cool. And it's interesting to see how much WACO has developed as a result, because where their shop was down in like a very warehouse district, relatively uninhabited. And then, so the first time I went, like a couple boutiques had popped up. The next time I went, like the whole street was lined because everybody is piggybacking off of that success and off of the tourists that come to town.
That's pretty neat. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember when they started, just kind of watching them develop as entrepreneurs. And it's like they definitely took some chances and kind of did it their way. And I absolutely respect that from them.
And I think it's really cool because like I love my husband. I don't know that we could work together every day. And I mean, he'll say that too. He can't, do really anything handy-wise, or he chooses not to. And so that would not be my day-to-day, but I think it's very neat that they do that. Then they have all the kids and they have that farm and just all of that going on. So.
Well, my wife will be the first one to tell you, I'm good at getting rid of mold, but I can't fix anything. So
yes, yeah. So my installer that hangs the artwork and window treatments for me, my husband always says, Josh saves our marriage because I don't have to worry about if I'm doing it to your liking. You don't have to tell me what to do, and I just come home and the stuff is up. So it works out pretty well.
Yep. That's why I had somebody build our deck, because I was not going to do it.
Yes, totally. So back to Chip and Joanna, though. The second time I went, a girlfriend went with me, and they were doing a warehouse sale from the Magnolia stuff, just like excess inventory, out at the fairgrounds. And Joanna's mom was out there running around the whole time, and she was just so cute. And I mean, the world was just flocking out there, and it was just a free-for-all, just tables of stuff, and you just grabbed it and then got in line and bought it, and you could get some really good stuff for good deals.
Neat. Yeah, I'd like to go down there and see it. I think it would be neat.
Yeah, it's worthwhile. And then my friend dragged me out to, you remember David Koresh and all of that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. She, being a reporter, she was like, can we go see it? And I was like, oh, my gosh. So we drove out there and we looked at the compound.
Yeah, it's still there.
Oh, it's still there. People still live there.
Really?
Uh-huh. And it was around the time that 25th anniversary, the show was on Paramount.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, a lot of people were out there looking too and just kind of, revisiting that story. But I wouldn't get out of the car because I was ready to make a break for it. Get away. So, yeah.
It's amazing what interests us as people.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. I know.
Yeah, I get sucked into those real life crime shows anyway.
Totally.
And then the podcast. Like I drive around listening to all the crime podcasts. And it's a wonder I can sleep at night actually. But.
Yes, but there is something so fascinating about it because it's just so different than what you are used to in your daily life. So I'm with you.
Oh, I was super fascinated by the whole Bardstown situation.
Yes.
Like, I mean, I've listened to that podcast, watched those shows.
Yep.
My sister-in-law is big into it. We talk about it all the time. Like, that just interests me to no end. Because it's so close to home, I think.
Absolutely. And it's so bizarre, and you just, want it to be solved. And I like to have an explanation for everything, and so I just need someone to figure it out and tell us so it's a neat bow and we understand this is what's happened. And then, you can go on.
Yes. Yeah, and the way they try to tie everything together.
Yes.
I'm like, there's something weird. It's just,
yes.
I want to see the result. Yeah.
Do you listen to Up and Vanished, that podcast?
I have, yes.
Yeah. I listened to, I've only done the first season, but I thought that was really cool how they were able to solve that cold case, just because he was going back and going through everything. So.
Yeah, that's interesting stuff. Like we got the Discovery Plus thing, and it's full of true life crime dramas like that.
Yeah.
So we watch those at night a lot.
Yeah. Oh, seems scary, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, it's a wonder I sleep. But so you get to travel around to all these sororities.
I do.
So I have a friend, a buddy of mine, who when he was in a fraternity. When he graduated, he went to work for the fraternity, and he went around for a couple of years, basically helping set up new chapters.
Yeah, as a consultant.
Yeah, compliance, all of that kind of stuff. So he was out at Stanford, and they got, I guess it's rush week or whatever they're setting up, and he starts talking to the lady who walked by. She introduced herself, talking, and it dawned on him that he was standing there talking to Chelsea Clinton.
Oh.
And he looks around, and he like, oh, she's like, yeah. He's like, where's the Secret Service? And she's like, oh, you would never know where they're at.
Oh, that's funny.
She's like, they're surrounded, but you would never know where they're at because they're dressed like...
Oh, I just assumed they just walked with her everywhere.
No, because they want her to try to have this college life, but they're like, she's like, yeah, you would never know which one's them.
Oh, that's funny.
So he ended up having like this 20-minute conversation with Chelsea Clinton. So have you got to meet anybody like really crazy in any of these sorority houses or anything?
No, not really. Because usually when I'm there, campus is clear. Nothing comes to mind actually about that. But speaking of Stanford, we watched last night Operation Varsity Blues about the college admissions scandal. Yes. Yeah, that was fascinating. Okay. Just totally fascinating and bizarre.
Interesting.
So it's on Netflix. It's worth a watch.
It's popped up on my recommendations. I just haven't watched it. I watched the documentary about Blockbuster, though.
So that's next on our list. But I'm a big, Full House, Fuller House lover. And so the fact that Aunt Becky, went down in that scandal, it just really broke my heart. And then her husband, I had a bunch of his clothes from Target. So I just feel like some, childhood stars and people I loved are kind of, crashed.
She didn't take the prison thing too well, did she?
I don't think so, yeah. I mean, I
not that I would either, but...
I know, yeah. I'm sure we all look rough, but yeah. They don't send her in to get Botox and stuff every once a week when you're in prison, so yeah. But anyway, that's kind of a sidebar, but it was fascinating, really interesting.
Okay. I planned on watching it, so I'll have to check it out. But yeah, definitely do the Blockbuster one.
I will, yeah.
So, especially since I grew up in that era, that was really...
I know when you would walk in and you would see the movie cover and you'd be like, oh, and grab it, but the video wouldn't be available behind it to rent. That was a weekend thing all the time, trying to get there as early as you could on Friday to rent the movies that you wanted to rent. Nobody knows what we're talking about now.
Yep. Oh, you hang out by the door waiting to see who drops in. What was that? Is that the one I wanted?
Mm-hmm. Yep, totally. Well, even the Netflix start, when it would get mailed to you and people were like, I'm sorry, what? The DVDs came to your mailbox? It just wasn't on your TV? And I'm like, no, you had to kind of plan and wait for it and get it shipped to you. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil anything for you, but let's just say Blockbuster made a big mistake. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, so. All right. Okay, good. Well, I'm excited to watch. It gives me something this weekend to look forward to.
Well, so for all of our listeners that are always asking us about, because usually we're involved in a real estate transaction, right? So they're getting ready to go into their new home and they're wanting to decorate. So what's up and coming? What are the color changes? What advice would you give for people who are I want to decorate my new home?
Sure. So gray is still holding on as the most popular neutral paint color in a home, although grayish is really where you want to go. So if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, sometimes gray can have a very cool undertone to it and make a house feel more blue or sterile or cold. But if you have a grayish paint color, it's blending beige and gray, hence the name. And so you have some warmer tones to it. So it still gives you that gray, so you feel like it's an updated look. It's getting you away from being too yellow, but it's also not just boring tan either. But I will tell you, a lot of people are just whiting out their whole house. White trim, white walls, white ceilings, just making everything white so that they have this nice blank canvas. Then they can put in whatever color furniture, rugs, artwork, and window treatments they want. And then they're not worried about the walls being too dark or contrasting and clashing with whatever furniture they want to put in. So usually if you're buying a new home, maybe all your furniture is not going to transfer so easily but you're just going to put some stuff in there while you look for new furniture. And so I think the white is just an easy solution for them because they can tell the painter, paint everything white, and then they come in, they know it's fresh, and then they can build their furniture and their spaces from there.
Okay. Now, are you seeing more of a transition back to, kind of wood furniture versus, say, the modern, or is this modern still... Or is that really kind of personal preference?
It's really personal preference because you have some people that are going to be very modern and love the metal and the glass. You have some people that are always going to be diehard stained wood fans. If you love cherry wood, everything in your house might be cherry.
That's my grandmother.
Yes, I know. It is. It's a generational thing for sure. And so I think we're coming to a point that I don't know that furniture is going to be appreciated anymore because we're not really into the hand-me-down stuff. Everyone wants new things, even if it's not that high quality furniture. And it used to be a thing, like you really wanted to invest in your furniture and you were keeping it for life. And that just doesn't seem to be where it's going right now. And then I think you have a mix of things too, like painted wood furniture is really popular, and even pieces that mix the stain and the paint. So it kind of depends on what you're going for with your overall aesthetic and the house style as well.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you brought up furniture though, because we were talking before we started recording that there's kind of an issue right now. Can you kind of explain what's going on with furniture and maybe people who are thinking about getting new furniture?
Yes. So what I was saying is I just never dreamed that last year, the COVID shutdowns, we would have so many residual effects that we are dealing with right now. And so obviously factories got behind when they had to close for COVID. Then they came back and had limited staff. So that slowed production down a little bit. We're all stuck in our homes looking at everything, deciding we don't like it anymore. We want to buy new. So the demand was creeping up and getting more and more. So they're already a little bit behind. You and I were talking about lumber prices were skyrocketing and there was a lumber shortage. So, we're buying up everything that's available in lumber. So, because the demand is so high. So furniture manufacturers were struggling with getting that raw material that they needed. Again, demand continues to increase this whole time. Now we have stimulus checks in play. So people are trying to spend the money like they're supposed to, getting it back in recirculation. So it's a great thing, but we're still behind in making furniture. And then most recently, the Texas storms shut down some plants that make the poly foam fill for furniture, for upholstery furniture. So that material is hard to come by. And that's just even if you're talking about American made. When you have things that are coming from overseas, as you can imagine, early on we were holding things in port for a long time because there was a lot of confusion about how COVID was spread and was it going to be on the stuff that came from China. Then we got past that. People were stealing barges with the cargo containers on it. Now they're overloading the boats so much, cargo containers are falling off in the middle of the ocean. And I've heard about this for apparel, clothing places, as well as home decor pieces. So, I mean, it's like you can't make it up. Every week it's something new. Yesterday I read, what's the canal that a barge.
Suez Canal,
yep,
yeah.
It's stuck so nobody can get through. And it's like,
oh, yeah, and they said it's going to take like 7 days to be able to clear it or something like that. Yeah.
Yes. And so what my team and I have been trying to do is just educate people and let them know what's going on, because you can still get your furniture, but something that may have taken 4 to 6 weeks to customize before is running 20, 30 weeks now. And so you have to be prepared for that and know that you're not going to be able to meet this Easter deadline or, by midsummer, you're not going to be able to redo all of your furniture. So I don't know. People have been really patient with it because everyone understands. We were in a pandemic and everyone understands, okay, I'm getting new furniture. This is something exciting. But it doesn't make it any less disappointing or frustrating. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, because we try to tie everything up in a neat bow for our clients and manage all of that from start to finish. And so when I have to call and say, the factory just called and said, they're behind again, and now it's going to be this. It's not a fun conversation.
So we got Mother's Day approaching in about a month or so, so probably furniture may not be the best choice.
Nope, probably not. And there are some stores that will sell you stuff off the floor, but then as you can imagine, if all that inventory is being purchased, they cannot get new items in either. So it's going to look like these places are going out of business. So it's something really unprecedented. Like the reps that we're talking to have been doing this for 20, 30 years. Never seen anything like it. And I mean, that doesn't really help you feel better if you're the one waiting on a sofa.
Right.
But I mean, literally, there's just no answers. You don't even know what to do. You're just in a holding pattern.
So has it affected the price of furniture?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. There have been some price increases. Usually there's an annual price increase, like 4% or something, just naturally because materials go up. But it's been the last few weeks, they have been sending out notices that there have been increases because they're struggling so much to get these materials. And they're trying to maybe control some of the demand in that regard.
Well, that's good to know. So yeah, I'm definitely thinking of a different present for Mother's Day. So, yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
No furniture. Well, I mean, unless you can just walk in and pick it up, but yeah.
Okay. So you've got to design a lot of people's houses.
Yeah.
A lot of places all over the country. what's the weirdest kind of thing anyone's asked you to decorate? Like what's the one, like if you were at a party and somebody said, what's the strangest thing that's happened to you in your work? What story would you tell?
Oh, it probably is something Greek related, I'm sure, We didn't have to do this. Maybe this isn't what you mean, but we were in a house in Ohio, and there was a room in the basement off of the dining room that was like a little stone cave, and it was all graffitied inside, and there was a mattress in there. It had been a men's facility before we were turning it to this women's facility, and I was like, I don't even want to know what happened in there. Somebody needs to go in there and close that up and paint over that, because I don't know what they did in there. Like being held hostage? I don't know.
Well, I've seen, we did a lake house one time, and it was just this little 1,000 square foot house. It was run down. The gentleman that had lived there had passed away, and I guess he had kind of been isolated himself for quite a while. So the house was just horribly covered in mold. We had to clear everything out, but we were in the garage and we saw this little kind of square, and we were like, "What is that?" We opened it up. And it dropped down to like what you would think of as like a root cellar, but then it had like a tunnel that went into another root cellar, and we were like, who's going in there? Like no one wanted to go in there, but we were like, this is creepy. Something weird has happened around here.
I know, but you kind of want to know like where it leads. Like,
yes.
Where does it take you? Oh, wow. Lakes. What lake?
It was over. It was actually outside of Bardstown.
Oh, okay.
There's a little lake over there in. What's that little town over there? New Haven? Yeah,
where
somewhere
the
around there.
Places. Oh, interesting. Well, I guess so nobody ever figured out where it went or what it did?
No. No, I mean, we it literally went from one little room through a tunnel into another little room. I mean, we didn't see any chains on the wall or anything like that, but I mean, it was kind of creepy feeling.
Like some kind of escape route or something,
Yeah.
Yikes,
so.
That's interesting. Well, that's odd.
Yeah, we've seen some really weird stuff.
Well, I'm sure, because the parts of a home that you all have to go into, I think could just, be very odd with just nuances and strange things.
Oh yeah, we've been in crawl spaces where you could tell they were partitioned off with cinder blocks, blankets, pillows. You could tell people had been living there. So we've seen a lot of stuff like that. Mattresses. Pretty interesting what we find sometimes.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. Every campus is different that we go to. I think that's the most interesting thing for us. Some campuses, just the culture is different. So it's kind of fascinating to go, and just whether it's based on the region or the state where they are, and just kind of learn a little bit more about the colleges.
So if someone is looking to buy a house to decorate or remodel or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, they want to bring in an interior decorator. What are some things they should be looking for? And obviously we want to give your information for people to contact you, but
sure.
What should people be asking? Like, what should they be looking for in an interior decorator, and why is one so important?
Sure. So we'll kind of talk about it in two segments, because you talked about redecorating or like a renovation. So there's some different things there. So when it comes to like a renovation or even a new construction project, a decorator designer can help you with your finishes. So you have to pick everything when it comes to those projects. It's not just telling the contractor like, oh, I just want a pretty vanity and give me some good floor tile. They're not there to pick that out for you. They are there to install it and make sure it's installed correctly and that it's warranted and all of that. So if you're not comfortable making the aesthetic decisions yourself or figuring out, okay, I like this picture in this magazine, how do I get that to be my actual space? That's where bringing in a decorator can help, because they can streamline everything for you and help you stay on budget, stay with the aesthetic you want, and you're not just all over the place. And it also then in turn keeps you on track with your timeline. Because the problem is when you don't have all of your things lined up and selected for your contractor to go buy, it delays the whole project. Because if you don't have those materials ready to go, when the tiler is there ready to put the tile in, you get bumped until, after these next jobs. And so everything gets really delayed. And I've had multiple clients tell me, I will always narrow it down to like 2 or 3 choices. So I'm not just saying put this tile in, like telling them what to do, but I'm like, based on what you've told me, here are 2 options that work within your budget and that are what your aesthetic is. And so I had someone say she went to just pick out granite the other day and for like a very small project. And the lady at the granite place was like, well, here it all is. And she said, no, Liz sends me 3 choices. Can you tell me which 3 I should pick from? So anyway, that's just funny. So that's from a construction side, how a decorator can help you. When it comes to decorating a space, so like you're not doing anything like structurally to the space, maybe you're just doing furniture, rugs, curtains, that kind of thing. What helps is when you go into a store, these showrooms are huge, like tall ceilings, vast, spaces. So the furniture, you're not getting a good sense of what that scale is compared to a room with 8 or 9 foot ceilings. If you're in like a little bungalow house, that sofa is going to look very different in your space. And so it's kind of reminding people we've got to measure, we have to have a plan based on your space for what size things work, how you're going to lay this out. Because if you start with a plan and then you go shopping, then you find the things that fit in your plan, as opposed to falling in love with that chair over there and then trying to make it happen in your space, and it just doesn't work. I was actually on my way here, I was talking to Erica, my coworker, and her sister had just gotten a sectional over the weekend. She bought it from someone else, and it was only 3 months old. And so they were like, well, why are you selling it? Well, when they got to the house to get it, they figured it out. The new owners downsized from a bigger house, and when they ordered this sectional, they didn't measure their new patio home. And so like it barely fit in the room. And the man was kind of a bigger guy, and so he had to squeeze between the wall and the So, people just don't think about measuring. So from a space planning perspective and just kind of pulling it all together really is what a decorator does for you. Everyone has a job, whether it's to raise your kids or to go to an office every day. If you're not a professional at this is not what you think about all the time. And so the point of a decorator is to help you avoid costly mistakes so that you can go focus on what you do on the daily, and then someone else can just make sure that you don't mess this up.
Sure. And you know where to get it for the best price and everything like that.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the thing too, is like we have to get very personal with our clients. We have to talk about money. We have to talk about how they live, because a family that has 6 kids and 3 dogs is going to need very different things than a retired couple that it's just the 2 of them in the house. The wearability is different. And then the budget, yes. Because if you say, I want to spend X number of dollars, I say, okay, great. These are the places that we need to go to. Or if you want to spend this much money, okay, well, let's look at these brands instead. Otherwise, you could drive yourself crazy, driving all over town, looking on the internet, trying to buy stuff. So, we just try to help narrow things down for people, make it a little bit easier.
Awesome. Well, how do people get a hold of you if they want to utilize your service?
Sure. So the easiest thing to do is go to our website, pdr-interiors.com. We're also on Facebook, Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. We have a YouTube channel where we have a number of videos that we've done that just kind of give tips and advice. But that's the easiest way to get us.
Well, awesome. Well, Liz, this has been very informative, and it's been a lot of fun. And thanks so much for being on.
I really appreciate it. Thanks, Clay.